The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
Some of the biggest influencers in America are doubling down on this and really do think you're garbage if you disagree with them. We're going to break down the latest insanity from some of the biggest left-wing influencers on the internet, Destiny and Hasan Piker, and so much more. On today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where I take on the craziest ideas from across the internet and across our politics, all from an independent perspective. So the context for this story is that Biden's getting dragged right now because of a viral clip in which he appears to suggest that all Trump supporters are trash. Take a listen.
And just the other day, a speaker at his rally called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. Well, let me tell you something. I don't know the Puerto Rican that I know, or Puerto Rico where I'm in my home state of Delaware. They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of things is unconscionable, and it's un-American. It's totally contrary to everything we've done, everything we've been.
So one, they're taking a joke a comedian made as if it was a serious statement made by a serious speaker, which is kind of absurd. Although I do think that Trump shouldn't have had a comedian at his rally. It's just not the right venue, and just weeks before an election, it's not smart. Still, I think it's absurd to take that as if it's a true serious statement when it was a joke by a roast comedian. Secondly, God, I'm just reminded by how decrepit this man is, who's got the nuclear codes. He sounds like he can barely string together a sentence. And to suggest that Trump supporters are all garbage is just a horrible and close-minded sentiment, which is why Biden and his aides are trying to walk this back or clarify and argue that he was actually saying Trump supporters with apostrophe S, referring specifically to that comedian, not all Trump supporters. Here's a clip from MSNBC explaining this line of defense from the White House.
The right have seized that comment to mean his supporters, meaning Donald Trump's supporters, meaning all Trump supporters, half the country, saying the president is calling them garbage. The White House is saying, no, there's an apostrophe there. He's talking about his supporter, meaning the comedian. His comments are unconscionable and un-American. That's the controversy last night. The president took to Twitter soon after the Zoom, tried to clean it up, clarifying that he was not talking about all of the Americans, but it is certainly half the American public. But it is certainly a controversy that the White House and the Harris campaign dealing with today. And as the right tries to make it, we're showing the tweet here from the president. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable, the president writes. That's all I meant to say. So the president said something, immediately tried to clarify it, Joe, but it's certainly a story on the right who are trying to paint this to be the next basket of deplorables.
I can't reach inside Biden's mind and know what he was truly thinking, or if he was really thinking at all, but I'm deeply skeptical of this very convenient excuse and the way they've put out this transcript trying to twist his words to distort them from the obvious meaning, which is a really close-minded and ignorant and just, I think, offensive statement to insult half the country because they disagree with you politically and say they're garbage. However, like I said, I can't know for sure what he truly meant. Although I will just say the media certainly doesn't parse Trump's words in this kind of defensive manner when he says crazy stuff, which he does do all the time. They just take it at face value. They don't jump through hoops to try to contextualize it so it's actually less bad than what it sounds like. Anyway, though, the more interesting aspect of this story to me was how many left-wing influencers like Destiny and Hasan Piker actually agreed with and doubled down on Biden's original sentiment that all Trump supporters are garbage. Hasan Piker, the super popular left-wing socialist streamer, wrote in a tweet, "I love that Trump can run on using the military against the enemies from within, mass deportation camps, and that immigrants are poisoning the blood of our country, but God forbid someone correctly calls them trash for supporting that shit." So one of the biggest influencers in America literally thinks that people who disagree with him politically are just trash human beings. And he is not alone in this sentiment, because another popular left-wing streamer, Stephen Bonnell, also known as Destiny, basically said the same thing in a tweet. He wrote, "Biden was right when he called them garbage. Hillary was right when she called them deplorables." I mean, you guys know that I'm not a Trump supporter, but I know so many people who are, and I know them to be good people in so many ways and so much more than just who they check off on the ballot at the ballot box every couple of years. So I was really disturbed by this sentiment. I mean, this notion that your fellow Americans are trash or garbage just because they disagree with you politically is incredibly toxic and close-minded, which is why Biden is trying to walk back those comments. It just strips the world of its complexities and its nuances and its shades of gray, and it ignorantly and honestly arrogantly pretends that the issues that divide us aren't complicated enough for good people with good faith to come down on opposite sides. And it flattens people into one-dimensional creatures, which we're not. I mean, there are people of all political persuasions who volunteer at their local soup kitchen, who sacrifice and serve their community in all sorts of different ways, and who treat their neighbors with kindness or do any of the other countless things that we consider making someone a good person. And who they check off at the ballot box every few years is just one small tiny piece of the 1,000-piece puzzle that constitutes who you are as a person. And despite all of his flaws, we can't just pretend there are no good reasons anyone would ever support Trump. Is somebody who struggled to feed their family under the inflation that we saw under the Biden-Harris administration, are they trash for voting for something different? Somebody who one of their loved ones was one of the 13 U.S. service members killed in Biden's disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal that he totally botched, are they just a horrible human being for voting against that administration that caused the death of their loved one? What about somebody whose family member was victimized by an illegal alien who shouldn't have even been in this country but was released under some of the Biden-Harris's policies, a criminal illegal alien who went on to hurt somebody or kill someone? I'm not going to judge the family of those victims for going out there and opposing that administration. Sorry, I'm just not. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're right. You might think they're wrong or misguided or have arguments to make about any of those issues. But simply prioritizing those concerns or the countless others that might draw one towards Trump, rather than the other ones that might understandably make people more sympathetic to Harris, does not make you a bad person at all. To suggest otherwise is just the height of intellectual arrogance. It's to look at your fellow Americans with contempt, not curiosity, and reveal that you have a remarkably closed mind. And that's where I come down on all of this, that what bothers me is not, did Biden say it, did he not? What bothers me is that some of the most influential people on the internet who are responsible for shaping the political thinking of future generations by the millions actually hold such a toxic and close-minded perspective that they may well be passing on. Anyway, that's my take on this story. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I do read the comments and I pick a few to respond to in every episode. Plus, if you leave your comment with a super chat or a super thanks, I'll definitely read it on the next show.